beautiful soul, and welcome to another episode of Intuitive Creators Spotlight. I am Stella, your host, and in this playlist, I invite intuitive creators who transform their lives by fully embracing their paths, their gifts, and now are on a mission to guide other people connect with themselves and transform their lives too. So today I have here with me the amazing Carolina. She is an astrologer. She left an amazing job behind, a six-figure career, to follow her calling. And I cannot wait for her to share everything about this. Hi, Carolina. Welcome to this interview.
Hey there, how you guys doing? Thank you for hosting me today, Stella. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and I very much appreciate all the purple colors
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
screen today
yeah.
because I love this color. Even my nails are this color today. So I'm very happy to be here with you today. And I know that, as I mentioned in the introduction, I know that you left a six-figure career behind. What was that moment when you just said to yourself, you know what, enough is enough, and I'm just gonna embrace my own path and I will choose to follow my calling. How did that moment look like for you?
That looked like a really messy moment. I had come to this realization in like I was in my early 40s having my Uranus opposition. If anybody knows what that looks like, it's when Uranus returns to the same place, not the same place, it returns to the opposition of your own natal Uranus. So it creates an 180-degree relationship, so like a seesaw, back and forth. So anyways, during that time I was very what I seemed to be like, I was doing my work. I was doing my day-to-day 9 to 5 job, working, but I was very deeply depressed, unhappy, not really certain why I was continuing to do that. I was having some deep doubts as the value of money. Like, and to this day, I don't believe. Sure, let's all earn as much money as possible, and I feel like we should all have that call in, but for what purpose and for what need? And at the time, all no matter how much money I was earning, I was deeply sad. I felt like I wasn't fulfilling a soul's desire, and I felt like I was very inauthentic, like I wasn't living up to what I was here for. And I was terrified because I didn't know what came next. I just knew that what I was doing then was not it, and I didn't want to continue doing it. I put the call out to the universe, like I really don't want to do this job anymore. And so the universe heard, and so did Uranus, because it was all perfectly timed. And I got this opportunity to leave my job with a package, and I was like, huh, well, this is pretty good because, even though I don't have a job on the other side, I at least have something to fall back on temporarily. And yes, I was married and that was comfortable, but it's just like this mental relief. And so I did, and I went down this path of exploration. But during that moment, during those months, which felt like years, but it was months, I had just like this horrible feeling in my body, just thinking about like continuing to do the grind of corporate work, of 9 to 5, being on the phone all day long, barely having the opportunity to go to the bathroom during the day. The only real point of release away from that computer, that experience, was like my lunchtime. And of course I could arrange all of my meetings that weren't like on video to be personal in person, but not everybody had that ability based on who you're working with. Because my company, I worked for Intel, which is a massive global, microprocessor producer of the world. And so my coworkers were all over the world. They weren't in just one place. Japan, South America, the US, different time zones. So there was just this constant need to be present, and um I wasn't really balanced in my time between myself and work. So yeah, I had that moment of realization, and I remember feeling really ill to my stomach, and anxiousness, and just a lot of yuck. And then as soon as I left, I spent about a week not being able to move my body. It's almost like the stress that I had been holding on to and not really dealing with released itself. And I ended up like in the hospital for the day with like this weird gut issue, which I haven't had since.
Ooh, that's good.
Right, and it was literally just the day, that was the week, and that was it, so all that toxicity that was built up just sort
Mm.
of let go, and yeah, I was able to, like, release that and move on, and since then, it's been this wild journey of dismantling and then rebuilding and discovery.
Mm. And it sounds like it was the perfect moment as well for you, and your body couldn't just do it any longer in that position, in that situation, and you chose to take this new path at the right moment. And isn't this so interesting how our body, our beautiful body, this vessel in this lifetime is always giving us signs and communicating with us and telling us, hey, you're sick to your stomach, pay attention to what's happening in your life. And it's so much more beautiful when you then connect with your body, you understand, you give it the chance to rest, and also are in connection with the universe. So I know you mentioned the some of the planets, Uranus, and how that played a big role for you in your journey. And when we talk about astrology, I know that many people see astrology as like predictions, and they look for, okay, what's going to happen next in my life. And I know that you view it as a tool for self discovery as well. So, or just as a tool of self discovery. Can you explain what's the difference between somebody coming in for an astrology reading, for example, that expects predictions, and somebody who comes to embrace this journey of self discovery?
The difference between the two. So astrology in back in the ancient times was really utilized as like a strategic tool. It was used and it was also used to be like, hey, Stella, you have been born with blah blah blah, and this is your fate. And so over time, humans have changed their minds, their cultures, their educations about the world. We form new ideas, and so has astrology. It has evolved over time to be both a place of self-discovery, self-awakening, shadow work, all of the things that you could want, as well as looking at the timing of activities that are potentially coming up for you in life. Now, there are plenty of astrologers out there who are highly skilled and can do some amazing predictions of what could happen to you. And are they everywhere? They're everywhere, but I don't know if they're tons of them. You know what I mean? Like I think it takes practice for someone to say this is exactly what's going to be happening to you, as well as like some level of intuition. And I'm talking thousands of hours of consults. And I know some individuals that are at that level. And I haven't done thousands and thousands of consults. That would be a misrepresentation of my skills. But what I propose and what I teach people in my membership is this discovery process of like, if you want to time things, awesome, but you really need to begin with the first part, which is understanding your chart in order to understand what it is that you're going to be predicting. So most people want to know, like, when am I going to get married? When am I going to get a job? When am I going to buy, the usual. And I think what's more interesting is like the conditions that you're going to be like developing for yourself leading up to those points. So, for example, the biggest maturation planet, or the maturation planet out there, is Saturn. So Saturn is this archetype that teaches us the cycle of development, of discipline, of determination, of responsibility is where we become the author of our lives. And so through the cycles of 27 to 30 years, we do that. And when it comes back to that point of 27, 30, if you are around that age, then yeah, hello, you're
Mhm.
having a Saturn return. And Saturn returns, most people in like the Instagram and TikTok worlds are like, oh my God, you're going to have a Saturn return. It's going to be awful. And no, that's not true. And that's part of my dislike of the social world, social media world with astrology, because they've taken it to a level of ridiculousness. My Saturn return was fucking epic.
Mm.
I bought a house and I got married. But for you, you might get arrested, like, or you die, like Jim Morrison, or like these other famous actors and musicians who never made it past their Saturn return and actually pass during those times.
Mm.
We all have our fates and our free will. And myself, I worked really hard. I was very driven to get married and buy a home. And so that was my Saturn return, because those are the things that I was planning for. You might be planning to like not be responsible in life and land in jail. I don't know. But we all have, and that might will also show up on your chart. Like
Mm.
these things are like the wackiest of things. Like does my Uranus opposition around that time definitely had the signature of like you're going to be redoing your values and your sense of like how you earn your money.
Mm.
Now, if you were to hear that, that tells me that if you're in a job that you've been in a long time and not really liking it, you might be changing
Reconsider.
it. Right. Exactly. So just keep those things in mind when people tell you these ridiculous statements of like how things are absolute, and they're not always that absolute. That there's definitely a your own decisions in the making.
Mm. Thank you so much for mentioning this because sometimes, people will come to different systems, right? Astrology or other kind of human design, and all of these systems with this huge expectation that this system will lay it out like for them like
Yeah.
a map, and it's going to be so precise. And yes, some of the things are precise, but I love that you mentioned the fact that it very much depends on how much work you do on yourself, what kind of intentions you have for your own life, for your own journey, because at the same time, it is a co creation with the universe. And yes, we are here to learn certain lessons at a soul level, but we can learn these lessons in so many different ways, right? It doesn't have to be just one way. And I love when we talk about these things and we bring awareness about these things because it just opens up the perspective of let's be curious about how we can actually work with this system, so that we understand ourselves better. And thank you for bringing this message into the world. So I know that before we started recording this interview, we talked a bit about the power of rituals, and you explained it to me so beautifully. That's why I would love to ask you, what role do you feel that, the ritual would play in somebody's personal transformation?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the stories that I share most recently with individuals is my journey of my spiritual awakening and my spirituality. Which, by the way, I did not foresee any of this. When I graduated from high school, I went to study biochemistry. Okay, so science oriented, very much of the logical base, and then I flipped, and that's a very typical story for, like, say, someone that has a Pisces nature. I'm a Pisces rising. So Pisces archetype is a dual one where it goes into two different fishes, right? And they're swimming, but they're going in different directions. And so eventually in your life, you may experience a different phase. And I did. And so my next phase in life, what is this, what you're seeing today? And when I discovered my true self of what I needed to do in life here, I really began practicing more intentionally specific actions to tap into an energy, to give an intention more oomph. And so part of that, for example, was initiating in a two initially it was actually going to be, I think it was like going to be 7 days. I was going to do 7 days chanting to Saturn every single day for a week. And that chanting and that mantra is a Sanskrit specific mantra for Saturn, using my mala that I had just created using a very intentional ritual of creation, which I sang and blessed the beads before I knotted them. And I did them during specific timed windows and with astrology. But this ritual was a little bit more intense and different because I carried it on for so long and it was done every single day. And the idea behind that was because I really wanted to develop the spiritual practices that could carry me through. And it also intentionally was to tap into this space that required of me to have be in contact with others all the time. Like I needed to be around others and not I didn't feel comfortable being by myself at times. And if you are a Libra, if you have a moon in Libra, your sun in Libra, the Libra archetypes really thrives on being with others. It's like how they learn about themselves. And so my moon is in Libra. And so that felt very comfortable for me. And so solitude did not, like going out and doing things by myself did not. But yet during this time, as I tapped into this space, and there's a lot of other things I've talked about on my blog about my own history as a immigrant here in the United States, of like not having a foundation, not having a core identity that's part of your root chakra work. If you're not, if you're feeling this instability where you're not really feel like this is your place or that place, and no, nor that's why I did the mantra. It was to heal that and to develop this spiritual practice and to do it as a devotion to Saturn, because Saturn is an SOB in my own chart. So it was multi-layered, and I went in this journey and I loved it. And it was the discipline that I needed, because it's kind of like walking a dog, right? Like every day you got to go walk your dog. And then every single day I had to go walk my spiritual self into this practice.
Mm, that takes a lot of dedication, and the power of decision is so big because you decided you're going to give this a go, you committed to it. And yeah, it's very interesting how, yeah, in this world that we're living now, everything is very fast paced, and we do expect things to happen very fast. But when it comes to connecting with elements of our journey, with what is it that we're stepping into, what do we need at a soul level, it is not just, it doesn't happen overnight. Yes, energetically or at the like decision level, it can happen immediately, but then this physical reality needs to catch up with what is it that we decided. And thank you for bringing this example, because it just shows how the power of focus and intention into something and doing it consistently, how it can shift so much in your life. So I know that you are working with individuals who are connecting with themselves, who go through a lot of personal transformation. But we know that in general, as we grow, as we move through life, society often has a lot of expectations of like how to be in your career. I remember even when I was in school, everybody would ask you like, so what kind of university you're going to apply to or stuff like that. There are certain expectations. How would you say that astrology helps someone break free from these external expectations?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the main beauties and gifts that astrology can give to us. So the moment you understand just beyond, say, your sun, moon, and rising, but those three are pretty important, you can really tap into the rest of what your mission here is in life. And I feel like it gives you permission to hold on to what's yours and quickly release what's not yours, because much of us out there do come into these situations where we're culturally told like you can do this or that, or you're not, why should you be interested in that, you should pursue that instead. And when you do that, when you're following somebody else's guidance and not your own, you're ultimately going to run into situations where you're going to ask yourself, like, why am I not deeply happy here? Why do I feel vacant? Why do I feel lost? And also, I could say, because I've experienced it myself, where you may have periods of time where you cannot decide or see the future because you're literally in a space of fog and dissolution before you can be rebuilt. And you can see those phases in time also in astrology and your timing. And that's the part where I like people to understand. Like, I did a presentation recently at an event I held. I had a 5-day summit where I wanted people to touch on to different parts of life, but also include portions of astrology in it. So I had different experts coming in, and one thing that I talked about when it was the health day was midlife transits. So midlife transits are basically the transits that happen between, like, say, oh, mid 30s to about like late 50s, early 60s, depending on your chart. And that's a big time, right? But those are, guess what? That is when shit is really grindy. That is, if you talk to anybody, those individuals that are having that tough time, that are going through the big changes, are in that age range.
Mm,
And astrologically, it shows us that there are these massive transits that happen during that time for us, right? We can't avoid the transits. Like, I had a student recently was like, well, does my chart ever like change? I'm like, nope, it never changes. It you are who you are. This is it. You're baked in this energy grid that you have. You can obviously evolve, but your sun sign is never going to change.
mm,
It may progress, which is, there's a different technique of like understanding its evolution of
mhm,
maturation, but at the end of the day, you're going to die with the same chart. And so the 30s to 50s help us to tap understand what's at play. Like, if I had known, like, hey, Carolina, you're gonna have all these things, all these transits that have these potentials, I would have had so much more relief and stress and depression, and hopefully have focused my time on something a little bit more productive than in that state of just total death, because you are reconfiguring your personality for most people. Who's
And often we shift our identities and we go through so many different awakenings and so
Mhm.
much that's happening. And I think, when we go through this kind of foggy situation in our life or multiple situations like that, it really helps to have a point of reference, and especially someone who is there to hold the space for that person to discover who they are at a deep level, to not to just look for the external factors. So I know that you describe yourself as a cosmic translator and guide rather than just as the title of astrologer. So with this in mind, how would you say you approach astrology? So when somebody comes to you, how do you do this cosmic translation for them?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that people can work with me. One of them, as I mentioned earlier, was my monthly membership. And in that, we have monthly calls as well as quarterly rituals. And through that process of this DIY self-paced initiative, you're naturally going to have questions for me. You're going to be like, I've looked at this and I'm still trying to understand what this may mean for me. And I would give you guys, that individual, some perspective, and sharing the resources or the guidance on how to lead them to that. My I do also readings. The my readings, most people want to just get into their natal chart, and I'll definitely do that. And one way that I do that with them is to try to give them places of self discovery, of like the the little the not journaling prompts, but yes, journaling prompts is helpful, but just the inquiries, the questions, the hey, have you thought of this, or what do you think about that, and that really just begins their process of like, oh wow, yeah, that's right, that's what you're talking. Okay, yeah, I need to do that. Oh yes, that is me. And so that general inquisition of if just being curious leads others to be more curious and open about their own charts, because we get stuck when we look at this diagram, the circle with these symbols. Most people, including myself in the beginning, I'm like, I don't know where to begin. And that's all really people want, is just like a light of be like, start here, go there first. And then when you're done with that inquiry, go over here. Because what happens when you look at your chart is inevitably you ask yourself questions. So, for example, I have Saturn in my fourth house. The fourth house is all about foundation, home, family, ancestors. It could also represent your parents. And Saturn is a place of this archetype of limitations, as I mentioned before. And so, what did I experience as a kid? I left my homeland at 8 years old and became a foreigner. So I was disconnected. And since then, I've lived as an immigrant, feeling like a foreigner in a foreign land. So Saturn has literally represented as a limitation of how I see myself within my homeland. Because even when I go back to Chile, I'm not a Chilean to them. They're like, nah, you're not from here. You haven't been here in a long time. And then when I'm here in the US, people are like, they're not certain. Like, they assume that I'm from here because my English is perfect. But when I start talking to them and like share more about them, and they're curious, like when I stopped dyeing my hair was brown. So then they were like, and they looked at my name, Carolina Velis, and like, that's an interesting name. I wonder where she's from.
Oh.
Right. And now my white hair, they're like, she's just an old lady. So they're not really certain, but they can sort of see that I'm not from here. And I don't consider myself a an American at all. I have a US passport, but I don't relate to much of the culture here. And I don't really, I enjoy the things that I enjoy about the US are the things that I enjoy about the world, which is like, it's so diverse, and there's so many cuisines, and there's so many people, and there's so many things of that nature, and textiles, and rituals that they do, and places to go to, and like all that. But I'm not a traditional when it comes to my nationality. And so yeah, Saturn has actually seen as that limitation there, and it's for me, it's in Gemini. So I struggled speaking as a kid, and Gemini is about talking and sharing and learning, and so I had a learning disability early on. I mean, like, this the it could go on and on. Like, I could tell you so many different things just tied to that. And so when you start exploring your chart, you start having these questions for yourself. I'm like, how has this really played out for me? And like, what can I do? Because each planet's position in the chart represents an opportunity of healing, of exploration, of tuning in, of amping up, of activation, especially if it's important in a portion of your chart. Like, say
Mhm.
it's in a place of the fifth house of creativity or children, which is also in the fifth house. And why creativity, children, why are they related? Well, because our children are our creative birthed entities, right?
Mm.
My painting would be my birth kid, so they're the same in that space. So yeah, if you have a lot of stuff in the fifth house, you might want to really explore that, because that the fifth house is a lot of fun. It's romance, it's also play, and you might have an opportunity to like really tap into that for wealth creation, depending on what's there, right? Whether that's Jupiter or Mars or Venus or Saturn, it doesn't matter. that there's something there to be discovered.
Mm. Wow, I could listen to you for hours and hours because it truly sounds like this beautiful magical place. And yes, I know some things about astrology, nowhere near as much as you do. But it's just fascinating to learn about so many details. And it's also interesting, you know, when you look at this timeline, this life that we live as you as Carolina, me as Stella, this lifetime, we think, okay, so why did this happen when I was a child? Why, like in your case, why did we have to move? It was my parents' decision. I didn't have a say. And in this human experience, it may feel like, okay, it was not something I wanted. But isn't this interesting how then later in life, when you look at a soul level, and then probably when you look at your natal chart, you understand why that needed to happen so that you learn some of the lessons,
Yeah.
um, you know, for your soul. And then now I know that you plan on uh, having a different journey in the future. Do you want to share more about this with us? Because who knows, somebody who's watching this video might find this video 1 year from now, or 2 or 5 years from now. So, what are your plans in terms of traveling and moving?
Yeah. So my desire is to be more of a nomad, and which is sort of cliche, because now that's everybody's mission. Um, when Uranus moved into Taurus in 2018, it brought on this tsunami of people really rethinking, obviously, their values, because Taurus is very much tied to that, but their place of home, right? And all of a sudden people are moving everywhere and becoming digital nomads. And thankfully, of course, that obviously couldn't have happened if we didn't have the internet, right? None of that would have happened if we didn't have the internet and if we didn't have the video capabilities that we have today, or the servers, or the blah 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 blah. And so I want to take what I love, which is astrology, and my passions about learning and other cultures, and I want to take that someplace else. But I am developing, my business is all online, and that's what's been on my mission for the last year, 2 years now, almost. I guess at the end of this year it'll be officially two. And be elsewhere. Like I am the type of individual who needs to explore other places for expansion. And one of the things that I am going to be exploring is what my astrocartography. So everybody's chart, everybody's natal chart can be layered over the planet's map, and you can find places in this world that are more attuned with a specific part of your chart. It's why some places for some people are much easier than others. Like some people will see like the worst of the worst things happen in one place, and then they move and it's a whole new different life. Some of that is attributed to your transits, the planetary weather of this moment, or it could be that, and or it could be that your chart in this particular place of the world gives you a whole different perspective, and therefore your reality shifts. Everything shifts, like not just you but everything around you. And so Mexico is one of those places for me where I have Jupiter running through a very important place in Mexico called Oaxaca, which is where a lot of the artisans do amazing work. It's considered to be more like the true traditional Mexican, authentic Mexican experience. And it just happens to be that my Jupiter's there, and Jupiter is a planet of expansion and growth, of luck. And so, yeah, I want to test it out. I've been there for like, I was there for a month and I loved it. I want to see how much more can happen. I do know that I ate a lot, and that's the thing with Jupiter. Like, Jupiter will expand anything it touches. So, I love to eat, and hopefully that won't expand my waistline. 'Cause I love tacos and I love the Mexican cuisine. But yeah, my future plans are to continue doing the work that I'm doing, which is to guide women in this process of discovery and cosmic timing through my monthly program and additional readings if people want to sign up for those. And then separately for discovering a new place to live and testing out what astrocartography looks like for me in that place. I know what the US looks like versus Chile. I've tested that out obviously over the last 40 some years. I'm aging myself. Um, so yeah, I know that. So and I've visited other parts of the world, and for example, Japan's another big one for me.
Mhm.
I love Japan. I love Japan. I've been obsessed with Japan, and so I looked up my astrocartography, and sure enough, I have major planetary lines through there, and I was like, that totally makes sense. But I could never live there. I visited, and I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I need laughter. I need self-expression. But what I loved about Japan, it's their commitment to art
Mhm.
and their precision in the things that they do. They're very intentional in everything they create, everything.
Oh, I love the diversity of all of these beautiful things that are in the world. That's why I can totally relate to like traveling the world and like exploring different kind of experiences and looking at places and feeling the energy because I can totally resonate with just like feeling where obviously you have a direct access to a very special line and you can see that through astrology. But like from my experience, I know I would always tune into the energy of the place and feel how like how does that align with my journey, my path, and even when we moved to our current location, that was a huge, huge thing because it was very much about how do I feel like living my life and creating my lifestyle, like really being grounded. And yes, as someone who moved around quite a bit myself, I moved to like different countries. That feeling was important for me, like to feel
Mhm.
that I can just ground myself and that was important, but at the same time really love exploring these places. And to everyone who's watching us, please take a moment to check out the description of this video to know how you can connect with Carolina. She's doing some amazing work and I know that she will continue to explore other maybe crafts and art, different kind of art, and just make sure that you are connecting with her and checking out her website. And so, Carolina, if you could leave the audience with one message about maybe personal growth or astrology or anything that comes to you as guidance, what would that message be for our audience?
Mm. You know, I think when you learn about astrology and if you're open to learning about your chart with others, people witnessing you, it's a very therapeutic practice, especially if you've dealt with a lot of trauma in your life, whether that's been physical, sexual, emotional abuse, or some sort of limitations in your capacity, or whatever they may be. And I would say that you are perfect. You are perfect as you are. There's Everybody wants to find meaning in the reason why we're here, and ultimately, the I believe the reason why we are on this earth at this time is purely to human and to experience love, to really experience all versions and faces of love, and take that into your next evolution as a human. So give yourself some grace of this self-discovery activation process that you're going to go through, and you're going to uncover things that you don't like, and then you're going to uncover things that you're going to be like, hell yeah, this is me, and I love me, and I love you too. So thank you for having me, Stella.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. I am so grateful for everything you shared with us because I'm sure I'm going to take some notes and revisit some of the suggestions in terms of like planets and what they mean and all of that. And for sure, it's going to be a pleasure to follow your journey going forward. And to everyone who's watching us, please, please, please take a moment to check the links to connect with Carolina, to check her programs, her other product services that she has available at the moment when you're watching this video. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, like this video, let us know your thoughts, and I cannot wait to see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.